Nick Wise, legend. I've been working with Nico for a couple of years, I think now, but I've known him for several. Uh, he worked at McGrath Coogee for many years, moved to Ray White Eastern. I'm going to tell this, Nick, so we can get into the questions. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
Great. Nick worked at McGrath Coogee, moved on to Ray White Eastern Beaches as a partner, as a 1/4 partner with three other really established agents. And just this year moved to Sotheby's Eastern Beaches, where James Ball works and has become. Are you a partner there, Nick?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Nick's come in there and he's now a partner with the business. Nick's had a great, uh, probably last couple of years. He's really applied himself for several, but his last couple of years in particular, he's had huge growth. He's had actually massive growth this year from last year. So he's tracking really well. I was excited to have him on. If you've got questions, as me and Nick have a conversation, because me and Nick have had heaps of these sort of conversations. If you want to, if you have any questions along the way, by all means, chip in. I, as you know, for many of these interviews, I kind of freestyle it. I have a conversation. I've got a relationship with these elite agents, and we kind of we can talk about whatever really. And Nick's an open book. How are you, mate, this morning?
Man, really good. Yeah, really good.
Sorry, everyone, you might want to mute your things unless you have a question. It might be easier because it's a 40-minute interview. What did you do this morning, Nick? Just so everyone knows.
My routine in the morning, I get up about 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock, my alarm goes off. I get out of bed 4:10, 4:15. I'm in the gym by 4:20. It's only down the road from me. I train for half an hour, 40 minutes. I'm not fixated on how long I'm training for. It's more just like getting in there, getting fresh, getting my mind right. And then I'll leave pretty quickly, get home, meditate every morning religiously, and then pretty much get into the office as soon as I can, really. So I'm kind of leaving home by about sort of 6:15. I'm usually in the office between like 6:30 and 6:45 at the moment.
And you do that every day during the week?
Generally every day, yeah. It'd be rare that I'm not doing it. It might be because I've got an appointment at, let's say, 8 a.m. or 7:30 or something like that, where I might work from home initially, but I'm getting up early every morning. I mean, this year in particular, it's gone a little bit earlier just to kind of give me a little bit of an edge coming out of another business into another business as well, wanting to start progressing, sellers and things like that as early as I can in the morning to get on with my day. And that's what I've found I'm doing a lot, between the hours of like sort of 6:45 and 7:30. I'm speaking to my pipeline. I'm speaking to my current vendors. I'm calling them. I'm texting them. And it kind of just sets my day.
You're calling them that early?
I'll call my vendors between 7:15 and 7:30. Yeah, no drama. Easy. I'll be texting my pipeline.
Do some of them find that too early?
Yeah, I guess you got to pick and choose them, but like if they're on the market and they're selling and they're motivated and they bought somewhere else, they want to hear from you that early, So like if I'm up in the morning and it's like 5:30 and I'm on the bike pedaling and I see a property that's come on the market last night, I'm not afraid to text someone in a WhatsApp group going, "Hey guys, it's just hit the market, just a heads up." It might be a softer thing like that, but if you need to call the vendor early in the morning, depending on who it is, yeah, I haven't got pushback from it yet. No. I think the texts are really critical. Yeah.
Go ahead, finish that.
I think the texts are really critical as well. And that's just either buyer texts, or just like a soft text about a property coming to market that's in the area or something you've sold. Because what I've found is that people are waking up and they're seeing the text from Nick Wise that's a property that's sold in their street or something that's relative to them. And it's kind of, you're connecting with them very early and they're seeing your name nice and early in the morning. They're talking to the wife, things like that. So yeah, I've had good cut through. Yeah.
And look, we're probably getting ahead of where we should because that's a lot for everyone to take in, but I'll slow it down if that's all right. Just so everyone knows, what's your sales goal this year and how many are you on?
Sales goal is 100. Yeah.
And what are you on?
And I'm on 41. I'm on 41.
Okay. How long have you been doing this?
This is my 10th year in real estate. So I did 3 years as an associate, and then this is my 7th year out of my own with running my own team.
Yes. And how old are you? Sorry, Nick. if you don't mind me asking?
So I just turned 33.
33, cool. And if you go back to the start, so my group here, this is my Korcula group, and I don't know if you heard, but we've got goals in here to do between 10 and 60. He's Bobby and that have a bigger one for their company, I think. But about and Paul Duke's 250 for his company out in actually in the Katoomba area, isn't that right, Paul? He's not there.
Mate, Penrith Lower Mountains, yeah.
Yeah. So our group's 10 to 60. Okay. So if we go back, I'm really curious about, I get really curious about the early years, because the way you run your business now is a bit foreign. Like that's probably too far ahead for a lot of the group now. But because if I said how many on your team currently?
Currently, there's 5 of us. So
so you've got yourself, an assistant, and 3 associates, right?
Correct.
So you're quite advanced in your journey. We're trying to help this group, who are Nick Wise 6, 7, 5, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So if you go back to those times, what are your memories of those times?
A lot of hard work, a lot of grinding, but I think my business really just spurred on from making calls. I didn't grow up in the eastern suburbs where I worked. I didn't go to school in the area as well. I was from the Northern Beaches, so I didn't have relationships. And I learned from a very early sort of start of my career, early age, and very, young in my career, that the only way I was going to be able to build a relationship was by picking up the phone, making phone calls. And it seems so straightforward, right? But so many of us forget to do that, especially if you get busier. But in your earlier days, working for McGrath and, having John McGrath there for me and, quite influential in, how I operated, was he said something once, and it always rings in my mind. It's the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I don't think it's actually luck. I think what it is that you give yourself more opportunities because you've got such a strong work ethic. And I think that's something that I sort of have as a pillar in my business now, is I think for me personally, I'm
things to charge and connect.
Did you have the right
Paulie or Peter, can you put yours on mute, Pete Star? Sorry, Nick.
I think for me, naturally, sales isn't that natural to me, and I'm not that open as a person and meeting, that's not me really. But I know that if I work hard, I can connect, I can build relationships, and I think that's as a young agent, that's what you just got to keep going back to and just keep grinding it out and continuously looking for those little 1% of growth in the business.
So the calls that you do, because if I'm sitting in this group and I hear you say I've got to make more calls, who if I've only been doing this for 2 years, 3, 4 years, who am I calling?
Yeah. So, I mean, depending on your situation, but I found the most cut through I was getting as a young agent is calling old open for inspection books. I wouldn't care if they were from 10 years ago. I'd say to the agent, and I was lucky enough to have agents in my office that were doing 100 deals at the time, go, mate, can I call your old open book? Oh, mate, this is from 5 years ago. Yeah, no worries. That's even better. I actually thought the later it was, the better, because those buyers, those sellers are not only have bought by the time, so you're building data, but you're also seeing them transact out of that property as well. So I found old OFIs were gold. And again, I was blessed to have agents that had done 100 deals a year over the last 5 to 10 years. So I had access to that. But then it was also okay, how do I then build a database and have something where I'm going to nurture a community? And for me, that was a big thing of how can I get as many people into that nurturing community as possible, and then start to build those relationships out from there. And that comes back to knocking on doors, cold calling. If I listed something in the street, I remember I listed something in Earl Street, right? We door knocked it on the Friday night. We called it. We called it then on the Saturday afternoon. We then went back, door knocked it again midway through the campaign. And all that was just collecting data to have owners in your database that you can then start to progress and start to create a relationship with. And, at the time, I didn't think it was such a long game, and it was probably very short-sighted. But now looking back, I think, if I had the idea of that it's such a long game, and the little 1% is getting someone's name and number at the open for inspection when the first time you meet them, and their email as well, those 1% start to compound. And I think that's a big thing in this game, is compounding so important. But that starts from day one in real estate.
That's good. Yeah, I've got a few, but I've got a few notes already. The thing on the old callbacks is a good one because I had a session with James Ball this morning, and he said that he goes, "Oh, you know what I did this week?" He's got all those listings at the moment, right? He said this week he went through old callback books himself.
Yeah.
He's got 15 listings online. He said he went through old callback books himself, not his team, and he said he found about 3 or 4 opportunities just himself going through them. And then I
What was
interviewed Will Phillips last week, which I'll share with the community next week. Will Phillips, when he moved to Byron, Nico, I said to him, mate, how did you get going in Byron? And he goes, mate, old callback books.
gold? It's gold.
Yeah, that's interesting. What was your first job in real estate? What was that?
First job in real estate was, a PA or associate agent to an agent at McGrath.
And
Um,
did you learn everything from him?
I think I learned a lot from him at the time, 100%. It was a very good office that I was involved with at the time. It was an office that had a lot of experienced agents. But when I went into it, I was a sponge, and after sort of, I guess, a couple of months, maybe even a couple of weeks, I was like, I didn't think I'd love it. Really didn't. I kind of fell into it in many ways, like a lot of us do. And I had an agent that I was working under who was, young and hungry and doing deals, and that excited me. So that energy rubbed off of me quite nicely. But he definitely taught me things along the way, for sure, without a doubt. And I've been very blessed to have that opportunity. And I've learned things from other agents and just trying to understand how other people's practice works, and trying to evolve my practice as much as I can over the early years, and still doing that today as well. Like, I think I've probably learned more in real estate in the last 2 years, a lot of it from yourself and other agents, than maybe I did learn in my first couple of years as well. But you just got to be constantly learning and being a sponge and understanding how people do some things, and what dialogue they use in different situations. And yeah.
Good on you, mate. And thank you. And you have had a really good. Well, what's been that when you think back, has it been hard?
Fucking oath. Yeah. Fucking oath. Real estate's
Really
hard. Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, I think it's hard. Like, I think you go up and you go up and down the roller coaster. You compare yourself to other agents. Real estate's a funny game because you got this scoreboard of like how many deals you've done. It's like sport, right? And I'm like ultra competitive. Like, I'm obsessed with things, so I get super competitive. But then it's great in some aspects, but it's a detriment in other ways as well. And when you have an immature, sort of idea around competition and your colleagues or other agents in the marketplace, you can get yourself in a pretty, I guess, a spiraling situation. I'm lucky to have mentors like yourself and other people around me. But I think, yeah, real estate is tough. Like, there's ups and downs. It's super competitive, but mate, that's why we love it. Like, there's a lot of times where we thought, fuck, this is too hard, but that's why you love it, because the highs are going to be high and the lows sometimes are low. But I want to try and I've been working on trying to keep centered, that you say, keep centered as best as we can. So it's not as high and low, but it's going to be tough. And that's why, we're rewarded the way we are, I think, as well.
Hmm. How did you go financially in the first few years?
Um, it was okay. I mean, I wasn't killing it by any means. I put a PA on first thing I did when I went out on my own. I put someone on straight away. I'm not very good at
You had the money in the bank, or you felt confident you could
that.
do enough sales?
No, I didn't have the money in the bank. I didn't have enough money to pay myself at the time. But I thought, my strengths are listing and prospecting and being in living rooms. If I start worrying about, my emails and, my calendar and, booking in marketing and doing the photos and things like that, I'm like, my business will just shift. So I recognized what my strengths were. And I thought, if I put on a PA who's going to do the admin for me, I can consistently do that and then consistently make calls, be in the door of properties, and someone can take care of that. And I didn't have the money to do it at first, not at all. But I do think that helped me on the trajectory nice and early. That allowed me to list and sell what I thought at the time was a strong number of properties in my first, second, and third year. And that kind of gave me a little bit of a springboard for sure. For sure.
And when did you start? Do you think you're a good agent?
I think I'm a good agent, but I think there's a long way to go, like, without a doubt. You see some of the guys that are in the industry that are doing bigger numbers than I am, have been in it for a long time, I must say. But I think I'm a good agent, but I definitely think like there's a lot of growth. I think there's a lot of growth with, various different parts of the business. But, I think I'm good. I'm very, I'm hardworking, I'm focused. It's just, for me, it's going to be time more than anything, I think.
Yeah, no, you're a very good agent. I often ask elite agents and high performers, do they think, and when did they get confident? Like, how's your confidence level now versus a couple of years ago? And how important is that? And how do you improve your confidence?
It's a good question. Like, I think my confidence levels now, they change property by property. Like I was, as a younger agent, selling a lot of apartments. So like, my third year on my own, I did 96 or 97 sales. I think 70 something of them were apartments, right? And then my mindset shifted to like, okay, well, I now want to get into that housing market. So a lot of my confidence changed. And I think, it's taken time to kind of build that confidence back up in that housing and semi market in the marketplaces that I sell. So I think the confidence can ebb and flow a little bit, but as I said, I'm competitive and I'm a bit of a confidence player as well. So once I start getting some runs on the board, the confidence comes back. But I think as a young person coming through, it's then about having those outlets and having those people that you can be around that are going to be able to bounce things off you, but like help you rise to be a better agent. Like I found personally, being in a new office here, being around some of the incredible people that were around here, not only James, but Clint and, great associates and, other agents in the office, has actually helped me rise to be a better person, better leader, better agent, things like that. So I think it's all just about being a sponge when you're learning, and then that confidence comes from that. Yeah.
And if someone said to you, how do I go about getting listings? What's the quickest way for me to get listings? How would you explain that? Like to find listings, to find listing opportunities.
Cool. Pick up the phone. Call people.
You're saying just call, so get on the calls and
Cool.
call as many people as you can, build your database, and you'll eventually start finding opportunities.
Call people, buyer work, creating the relationship with the buyer work, those two things. But you've got to pick up the phone first. You got to pick up the phone to find buyers. You got to pick up the phone to find potential sellers. You got to pick up the phone to find building relationships. But I think if you're working to build your practice and learn and progress, you got to be picking up the phone and make more calls. If someone wants to go from having 2 listings to 5 in a month, I think they need to be trying to generate more calls, and then also trying to find an avenue within the business of how that business can actually generate more calls as well. Whether that's putting someone on, whether that's having a lead generation type, part of their business. I think for me personally, calls has been the biggest thing that's seen progress, and then plugging in different team members at the right time to start kick forwarding that momentum as well, for sure.
Yeah, so you're saying the fundamentally it starts with calls, and as your business has grown, you've added more depth to it by putting associates on. If we just go back a minute, a question that people would have is, how do you go from selling a lot of apartments to moving into selling houses? Like, other than making the mind shift, how did you do it practically?
So I had some really clear KPIs around what I was going to do to make sure that I was talking to those owners within my database and people that I'd met in the past. So, my KPIs were very simple from the get-go. Like, it was 50 connects a day, three appointments booked in, appraisal, listing appointment, buyer appointment. And they were really the KPIs, right? 50 calls, 50 connections, three appointments booked in for the day, every day, and just methodically had it like that. I then built that out further of going, okay, well, it's not only 50 connects, because I got to look at who we're connecting with, right? So I got to actually be connecting with house owners. So I actually implemented, you've got to be connecting with at least 30 house owners every single day, and then at least 10 house buyers every single day as well. Because that not only that buyer work there is like, you're shifting them into the market. So, speaking with you a lot and talking about buyer with my team, it's like, what we recognize is like, if you control the market going in, you will eventually control the market going out. You know what I mean? So like, if you're controlling the buyer movement and the buyer work into properties, you'll then start to control it coming out. I think like some of the big agents in our marketplace that do it very well and have done it well for a long time, Phillips and, Ballsy and the Maccas and things like that. Like McClay's probably a perfect example of like, he's controlled that inward buyer work for so long that's why his business probably went from 4 million to 7 million in like 12 to 18 months. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure Alex did the same thing, where he had so much control and relationship with the buyers going into properties that their businesses jumped so quickly because it's a circle, right? And it's a community, and that's how it actually revolves. So I think for me, I had that top of mind, and if I can control buyers better and talk to more homeowners every single day, then I'm just going to be having more homeowners in my pipeline. I'm more relevant to them, and therefore I'm hopefully getting in more doors and giving myself more opportunities.
Yeah, good one. That's good. So Nick made a big shift, guys and girls, from when I first met him. He was selling a lot of 2-bedroom apartments in Coogee, and he'd sell 10 properties a month. 2 would be houses, 8 apartments. And over the last 2 years, he shifted it, where if you look at his sales online, they're predominantly houses between 2.5 and 6 now, Nick.
Yeah, 2.5 and 5, something like that. Yeah. Most of them are probably, average sales like 3 mil at the moment. So yeah, it's been nice. It's been good.
By the way, guys and girls, I'll put up the chat. So I know some of you may have some questions as you go. I've put it up at the start. If you've got any questions for Nick, or please send them through. Database, mate, what do you use there? And how many owners on your owner database?
I use Box and Dice, which CRM, I'd probably have, I don't know, 5,000 owners on there, but I probably really only service 2,000 realistically. Yeah.
And how do you service them?
Calls, email out every week, especially to my core area. So 2031, 2034, main areas that I'm focusing on, Eastern Beaches, will get an email every week of new listings that have come to market, new auctions, auction results, anything that's passed in as well, if you're a homeowner in that area.
This is important. So it's weekly?
Weekly, yeah. Every Saturday afternoon.
Who prepares that for you?
Sarah, my EA, prepares it during the week. The boys then will come back on a Saturday afternoon in my team, and they'll take turns. Each associate has 1 week, and it revolves. So they'll come back, make all the calls to any agents, find out the information, and they'll send it out through our CRM system, which goes to, and again, this is going back to, I only send it to homeowners, not apartment owners, because I want to have the profile of houses.
So you pulled back from communicating with apartments and really just dialed it in with house owners.
Correct.
And that's the prospect.
Correct.
Okay, so that's good. So there's a weekly newsletter, a monthly one, or it's just weekly?
Monthly newsletter as well. Yep.
Yeah. And that's different to the weekly thing?
So the monthly newsletter is just like a review for the month. And then we'll also be texting. Let's say, for example, we sold something in Randwick the other day. We'll call the boys will call the street. I'll text the street as well. And then for my pipeline, who's ever in the pipeline who owns a property in Randwick, they're getting a direct text from Nick Wise. Hey, we just sold this, sold for X. How's yours going? How's the work? Things like that. So it's a bit more personalized as well.
Yeah, cool. Listing wise, I mean, and it's just so everyone knows, Nick's probably one of the hardest working agents I know. Like, he is relentless, and I'm not just saying that. Most agents work 50 to 60 hours a week, some 65. Nick's in the 70s. So if you like, I've always tell him he's working too much. Nick's in the office at like 6:30. So he's doing 12-hour days, minimum 11. He's doing full days Saturdays. Do you work Sundays?
Occasionally, depends on the appointment, but yeah, occasionally. I haven't worked as much Sundays this year. But last year, for the back half of the year, I worked all Sundays from maybe August to the end of the year till December.
Yeah. I mean, I think he works too much, but that's his choice. I'm sure he'll work less, or I'm hoping he'll work less into the future, because he's really committed, like seriously committed. That's good. And James says the same thing about you. Now that he works in the same office.
I know. Yeah. He says you should work less. He says you should go home and hang out with your missus more often.
Get a life, Nick. Get a life. You can't just be real estate, mate. That's good. So, how's your team going, and how do you train them?
I've been really lucky that, and I say lucky because I've had a bit of a shift in my team over the last 12 months. It's actually made me into a better leader and a better communicator and a better person, I think, in real estate. There's a few, I had a team which a few people left, and there was a little bit of disruption during the middle of last year. So I've been growing a younger team and sort of trying to develop them as best as I can. And I've been lucky to have a couple of good agents or standalone agents that have now joined the team, which have been really instrumental in me seeing some growth this year and really good growth as a team and as a unit. So the team's great currently. What we do is we always do one-on-ones during the week. So everyone has a one-on-one Tuesday morning. They start pretty early. So half an hour or as long as they really need, but it's usually about half an hour for each team member. We track goals. We track, what properties they've got coming to market. We talk about any of their challenges. I try and just be as contactable as possible for them because I think, time is so important with these young guys and girls. And I feel like if you can provide that for them, there's so much more buy-in and they know that you care because you do care, you respect and you care and you want the best for them. And I want them to grow and be successful agents one day because that's what will make me feel great when they're got their own team and running their own business and they're writing $1 million or doing 100 sales, whatever it might be. So I think time is super important for these guys. And it's just about giving back to them as much as you can with that stuff. Yeah.
Good on you. Yeah. So Nick had a lot of change last year. He had a few of his guys that he had to reset. He's got 3 juniors, 1 assistant. So that's great. Christian, did you want to ask Nick your question, mate?
Yeah, mate, thank you for that. Nick, just obviously probably in a similar position to maybe where you were sort of trying to make that transition from apartments to houses. And that question does tend to come up in terms of, yes, you guys are very prominent with the apartment market, but that lack of experience with transacting in houses or lack of runs on the board, how would you approach that conversation with vendors?
This is in the listing presentation?
Yeah, in the listing presentation.
Yeah. And do you have any other agents within your office that sell a couple of more houses than you do?
No, I probably sell the most houses in the office, but yeah, our office is predominantly based around apartments. And as we're expanding into different suburbs, obviously more opportunities for housing are coming up. We're sort of going toe to toe with a lot of those established agents in those areas.
I think the main things I'd be focusing on there is a couple of things. When I'm speaking to those vendors, I'd be talking about how you're actually putting deals together in the housing market, for example, using case studies for those, which is obvious, but it's probably narrowing down and getting more granular around that. So in your listing presentation, you're talking about your access to buyers, right? Who are the best buyers in the marketplace right now? Where are they coming from? Well, they're coming from the apartment. So I'd probably be using that as much as you can, right? How are you influencing those buyers? So the first pillar would be access. The next one would be influence. And the third one would probably be buyer behavior and where you're transitioning these buyers from, how you're actually joining the dots from that buyer going to this property into this suburb, if that makes sense. And mate, the best thing I found is bringing a buyer list. Bring your hot buyer list. Like I actually have I take mine everywhere. Like I've literally got mine here right now. That's my hot buyer list right there. Bring your hot buyer list in or bring in your best 5 or 10 buyers and sit in the living room with them and say, look, guys, these are your best 10 buyers. There's, John Smith, he missed out on X. Who's the underbidder at this price? He's got a budget of that. He's got the capacity to go to this. What you want to do is, because you don't have runs on the board, you want to overly share with them around how you've got so much access to these buyers that they feel comfortable with giving you the business because you're the man for the job because you have access to these people, right? So I think sometimes we can go and we get confused, they've got all these runs on the board, but what are they actually doing to get you a better price? And just breaking that down a little bit more with them and having tangible buyers in front of you. These are the best buyers. Let's go through them. I'll talk to them about them right now. Let me take 10 of them through on the weekend, sign an agency for 30 days. Let's see if we can get a buyer off market. If we can't, all good. Maybe you go with someone else, but give me a shot at it first. I reckon this guy might buy it and go into it about him. He missed out on 10 Smith Street. He missed out on this. He's moving from New York, whatever it might be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. No, it's really good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's good. Just further to that, Christian, because someone else had a question, whenever you're up against a high profile agent or they're saying this agency sells more than you, the best thing to say is just because they sell more than us doesn't mean they get doesn't mean they sold them well.
Mm-hmm.
So someone might go, but you guys sell a lot of apartments, not many houses. Yeah, that's true. But just because agent B has sold more houses in this suburb doesn't mean they've sold them well. Like you just got to influence. You've got to find ways to influence. But Nick's really cut down the buy. Nick's breaking down. We got buyers. We got access. We influence them. Give us a shot.
Yeah.
Do you always feel positive at going to work and energetic, or do you like have to drag yourself out of bed sometimes?
Mate, generally I'm pretty positive. Like sometimes it's tough. You know what I mean? Like when we chat, sometimes you can tell it's tough. Like I'm in my own head. I'm comparing. Yeah, it's tough sometimes. But I think you can't get stuck in that. That hole. And yeah, to answer your question, sometimes it's not as easy to get out of bed. But I think if you've got a really good routine and you're following that routine, it just makes it so much easier. Like, I don't drink alcohol now as well. That obviously helps big time. So I think that having that gone out of my life, especially like when I'm in Sydney and when I'm working, it means there's just one more hurdle out of the way for me to get up on a Monday morning and know that I've got a couple of properties that are overpriced and a bad offer on a property and a vendor that's going to go with another competitor, and just like, mate, that's real estate though, right? And that's again why I go back. You got to love it. But if you're hungover, you've had a big weekend, and you're just down on yourself anyways, like you just kind of got to shrug that off. And I think not drinking's probably helped me do that over the last year or so, for sure.
Yeah, it's a hard one because I reckon everyone, like even elite performers, you guys get hit around the head a bit, and then you've got other agents who sell 10 or 5 or 15 or 30 a year. It's such a hard one to stay on all the time. You've got to stay on all the. That's hard. You didn't take holidays for the first few years? I know when we first got together, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
Was that a cost thing, or you were committed to work, or you couldn't be staffed, or?
Mate, I just so last year was the first year that I took more than 10 days off during the middle of the year. I never wanted to miss two weeks of auctions. I didn't really think I needed them as well. The business was performing well at the time, and I don't actually regret doing it. It's just, for me, that's I actually enjoy working. Like, I love working. I actually love it. So for me, it wasn't a cost thing. It was just more, I wanted to be here. And I get that fear of missing out. And, again, a bit of that comparison mode of seeing someone list something or losing business. But, I've kind of come to the realization that, there's more to life than that. And, now I'm enjoying good holidays with my wife, and, we go away quite frequently and things like that, which it's been fantastic. It's been, eye-opening. But I think as well, like in your younger years, you need to make sacrifices. And like, that was a sacrifice I was happy to make. I'd go to Bali for 7 days, come back, I feel refreshed, I'm back on, I wasn't doing the big Europe trip and, having the photos on the yacht and things like that. I also didn't think I was at the stage of my career where I was going to do that, or I was able to do that. So, I don't have any regrets about it, but, it was just grinding in the first few years for sure.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you. Do you say no to listings, Nico?
Very rarely.
Very rarely. Mel, can you share your example quickly that happened during the week, if you don't mind, quickly?
What's that?
Mel's going to share an example of a situation.
Sorry, I'm muted. I didn't realise. Well, I was caught into a property which had been on the market with another agent, for a good agent, for 5 or 6 weeks, guiding 2.6. It was a flip. He'd renovated it, not in a great location. He wanted 3 million, but his bottom line was 2.8. I think it's probably worth 2.5. They only had they had less than 20 people through in 6 weeks. He said he was leaning towards going with us on market, but probably not till August. But in the meantime, wanted myself and 3 other agencies to show it off market at 2.8. If he didn't get 2.8 over the next 2 months, he'd relist with lower expectations in August. I asked the team here, I don't feel like we had any buyers at that price point that would probably look at it. And I guess I had to weigh up, is it worthwhile trying to show it off market, which we don't produce a buyer, might influence, who he uses going on market in August, I guess.
Yeah.
And because he did say that would also come into it. He said if we didn't want to participate, he'd respect that and he'd call me when he was ready to go to market. I said no, that we wouldn't take it on in an open agency agreement.
Yeah, so how did you say this is important? Because the market's getting a bit trickier in some areas, and you may have made the right decision. I'll get
I
Nick's
might have made the wrong decision as well. Who knows? But
time will tell. How did, for the group and for me and Nick, how did you decline that opportunity? Gently or politely or professionally?
I said that I really did want to help him, and I did try to see if he would at least commit to just, I guess, us showing it off market for the next few weeks at his price, with an exclusive agreement. And if he didn't get that, relaunching, we have access, I guess, to the same buyers as the other agents, plus more in other suburbs. But he's said he still wanted to give everyone an open agency agreement. So I guess if he didn't see value in what we could offer, I just wished him well and said that I'd check in with him in a few weeks.
What would you? Thanks, Mel, for sharing that. That's a good one. That's why I want to spend 3 or 4 minutes on this. Nick, what would you have done in that sitch?
I think, Mel, you handled that really well. Like, the question that I thought Ivan was saying was like, if someone's like, Nick, I'm going to give you the business to go to auction, but I'm overpriced, would you take it on? Whereas in that situation, he's gone to market, he's clearly overpriced. He wants you to run around with 3 or 4 other agents.
Yeah.
Like, I would probably just service him in a more apparent way of like updating him with your results instead of taking all the time out of your day to take buyers through who aren't ever going to buy it, and probably just service him like that. So I think you've made the right call there. I think open agents, you lose so much control with them, and like it's just like a flip of the coin in the end of the day, like who he likes more, or like, to be honest, who bullshits him the most, like for lack of better words, to say like, I've got the best buyers in the market, when he should just be taking off the market and launching it with one agent on the 27th of July, just after the school holidays. So I actually think you've made the right decision there for sure. From me, I would probably just keep that top of mind on your pipeline. He probably will respect that you haven't taken it on because he probably knows it's overpriced, but really just checking his motivation over the next couple of months and being top of mind all the time. So sending him the early text message in the morning, hey, Mr. Vendor, this just sold, or we've just listed this one. Keep you updated. How's the sale of yours going? Have you got any buyers on it yet? We'll send someone through if we have anyone. Just so you're top of mind, and then hopefully you get an opportunity when the time comes to sit down and pitch for it properly.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds great.
I thought you did. Thanks, Mel. Does that reassure you that you did the right thing? That would
it does. Yeah.
I mean, if Nick's going, you did well. That's really good. So well done.
Thanks.
Do you mind sharing that McPherson Street situation? Vinny and Gav are in here in Alex's team. Do you mind sharing that situation? Because I thought that was a good one too, because AEP, who's the #1 agent in the country, 10 years, did not sell the property. Is that right?
Yeah.
So tell us how you did you pitch on that last year, and just tell everyone the story quickly.
So there's a house in Bronte, McPherson Street, which was on the market about 12 to 18 months ago with Alex. Alex has been one of our biggest competitors in the market. He's, obviously the #1 agent and things like that, and, really owns that Bronte marketplace. So it was on the market previously, a couple of times actually with, I think the vendors had, inflated expectations at the time. So we stayed on the owner, just kind of creating a relationship, building rapport through sales, whether they were my own, whether they were colleagues, whether they were other agents in the area, to at least create some kind of connection with them. When we felt as though they were in a position where they were more motivated to sell the property because there was external factors happening, we met with them, we sat down, we gave them a really clear strategy as to how we could try and sell the property. And initially that was off market by getting our best buyers through the property, with buyers coming from anywhere from, a couple of kilometres away up the coast or down the coast, or the harbourside buyers as well. From there, we had feedback from the marketplace, which was at a level that the owners were comfortable with.
Sorry, Nick, you see you signed it up for off market?
Signed it up for off market, correct.
What did you tell the owners they could expect? Which range? What was the range on the agreement?
7.5 to 8 million.
Okay, keep going.
So then we had it off market. They went away, and for my off markets, and I've probably learned this from, guys like Alex and McClay, it's just being as active as you can with off markets to show the owner how proactive you are as an agent. So between the time when they were away for 7 days, we'd been at the property probably 14 times. We'd probably taken close to 20 buyers through the property. We'd do an appointment at 7 a.m. in the morning. I'd text them straight after or give them a call. We'd do an appointment in the evening. So they were just like, you're absolutely hustling to make sure we know that we're milking our database for as much as it can. And then obviously give them the next option of stage 2, which would be going to market to give it some more exposure. So we did that. We couldn't get the result. We then obviously went to market. The property went to auction. It didn't sell. We actually pulled it pre-auction because we had one buyer that was a little bit fickle on it, and put the deal together the following week. With that same buyer.
What were you guiding for the auction?
Originally we were guiding 7. We then published and moved the guide up to 7.1. We then moved the guide to 7.250, and then it sold for 7.650.
And that was a week after auction.
Yeah, a week after auction, week or two after auction. Yeah.
That's a good one. Well done. Good stuff. Just in relation to your listing presentation, Bobby, Adam, do you want to ask him about your challenge while we got Nick? I reckon it could be good coming from Nick.
Yeah, if that's okay.
And also,
maybe
guys, girls, if you are going to ask Nick a question, I think if you come in, if you could just introduce yourself so he knows who you are and where you're from.
Yeah, so my business partner Bobby and I, g'day, we're from Wilton, which is about 30 minutes inland from Wollongong, south of Sydney.
Nice.
We set up here with quite well established like market share, and then for a little while we really only serviced Wilton, but it meant it was very attractive for people in Wilton to come to us. We would refer work in other suburbs away, and it became this sort of thing where maybe the listing presentation got rusty, I guess. It was always conversational for us. We didn't bring material. We tried to present ourselves a little differently. We tried to feel very different for the owner. If they were going to interview 3 people, we were trying to look like it was, we're not bringing documents. It just feels a lot more comfortable. But now that we're expanding into surrounding suburbs, we're finding that that's probably a little rusty. If we've been in this area for 5-6 years now, there's an approach that's worked for us, but do we need to start from square one with a different approach?
Yeah, so I'll time out there. So I'll summarise the question for the group. That's a good one, Bob. That's a good one, Adam. They've had a listing presentation, Nick, that's worked for them for this market, this core market. They've expanded their footprint. The question is, should we evolve and change up our listing presentation as we expand our footprint? Okay, so I've made it a very simple question for you, or clarified it for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. To answer your question, I think your listing appointment should be evolving all the time. I think that different marketplaces are going to be more receptive to different conversations depending on the demographic and profile of buyer. But I think just naturally, like my listing presentation's probably changed since the start of the year. And that came back from sitting down with McClay and talking to him about how he lists property in Paddington. I haven't sold anything in Paddington in 5 years, but I want to understand what gets his owners ticking in a higher price point. So then I can understand what that, let's say, owner or that profile of person, whether they're a business person or whether they're, a commercial type person, well off, whatever it might be, I can actually connect with them better. So I think it's understanding your marketplace and then evolving your pitch to suit that. And if you're pitching very relaxed and laid back, and that's not the kind of what they're used to, it might be throwing them out a little bit, I'd say.
I reckon too, if I could just jump in, Adam, Bobby, and for everybody, my view is if it's working, it's really simple. Don't overcomplicate it. If it's working, don't change anything, right? So if you're having a good run of wins and you're ahead of your goals and your listing percentage win rate's strong, why would you change anything? I would start changing things when I start losing 3 in a week or 6 in a month, or I'm not feeling as confident here, because then you go, well, something's happening here. There's some themes here. In my career, there were times where I was just humming along and would list heaps in a row. And then, there'd be times where I'd go through a lull and I go, oh, maybe what I'm saying is not right, because the competition also adapts. So I would be listing a certain way, and then all of a sudden Tuma would be saying something in Redfern that would get me for a couple of months. I'd be like, fuck, I need to change this up because Tuma's getting me on this. So there's a few indicators, Adam, Bobby, and for everybody. If your listing presentation's working, your win rate's good, don't change anything. It's working. And that's what I say to my coachees all the time. I'm like, it's working. Don't change anything. Stick with it. But if you're starting to lose a few, and that's why I always ask people, what's your challenge? What's going on? Have you lost listings lately? I always ask that question in my one-on-one coaching, don't I, Nick?
Yeah, all the time.
Always asking Nick and others.
Every session.
And what have you lost? Have you lost many lately? And usually they're not one or two. Did you think you're going to get them? No, not really. Okay, let's not talk about it today. Yeah, there were 3 and I thought I was going to get all of them. So I don't know if that's helped, Adam, but if it's working, it's working. If it's not, then you have to look at, well, what are we saying? What are we doing? And one more story. I remember years ago, me, we were losing some business in Surrey Hills, which was our core market. And like the guys we were losing against were going in really low on fee and whatever, and they were being really aggressive because they kind of had to. So me and Will Phillips said, what are we going to do about this? Let's start going to listings together. Literally, we made that decision. And so we said, let's just, whatever you get a call in, let's go together as 2, and that's how we'll beat Foy and Tuma. So we started going in together, and sure enough, it changed. And all of a sudden, we started winning a few. We didn't have to go together forever. There was just a phase there for about 6 months when me and Will went together, and that was anyway. I'm getting off track. Tommy Chappell, does that help, Adam, Bobby, Nick, or anyone?
Thanks for that, Nick. Yeah, well, I think you touched it on perfect. The fact that we were so confident that we didn't have to change anything because we had such a high rate. And then it's only recently, a little of the last month, we were like, we should have got that one, we should have got that one, we should have got that one. And then the email you sent recently about having like actual hard documents there with you is so against what we normally do. Because as Adam alluded to, the fact that we're conversational, the fact that someone's not looking at something and just talking to us instead has worked so well for us. So if we're going to move so far away from something that has worked, is that worth the risk for us? But it's sounding very much like we should be doing it.
I think just on that as well, boys, like maybe you got to go back to the vendors that you've missed and call the last 3 and go, hey guys, we just, we're trying to build in this area. Can you just give me some really clear feedback as to what we could have done better? But then also the ones that you get in that area, call them as well. Hey guys, like, we got it, we nailed it. Like, tell me why you went with us versus the other agent, and then just hone in on those aspects that they mentioned to you. I think it's the best way of doing it.
Cool.
Yeah,
thanks, Ed.
You're saying the feedback loop is how you learn, Nico.
Yeah,
of course, definitely. Tommy, I thought you had a pretty good challenge. Did you want to bring that up whilst we've got Nico here?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, hi Nick, it's Tommy from McGrath on the Gold Coast. Mate, I'd just like to know how, like, what your dialogue is for doing more probably off-market sales. Like, how are you actually, how are you creating the opportunity? Like, how are you getting in the door there? Is it as simple as, hey, we've got a leftover buyer from this auction, they're the underbidder. If I got you the right price, would you consider selling? Like, is it as simple as that, or like what's your sort of dialogue around that?
Sorry, and again, I might just simplify the question for the group and viewers. You're saying, Tommy, if you happen to get on front of someone who's considering a sale, how do you progress them to off-market?
How do you just create the off-market opportunity? Not even like from stage 1 to stage 2, like getting it on the market afterwards. We've kind of touched on that, but like, how are you actually just creating the first opportunity, getting in the door? Like, you hear of all you guys doing all these off-market sales. Like, how is that happening?
I think a couple of things there, like from what I understand, the question is like looking at what your process actually looks like. My process to selling is like, firstly off market, then to market anyways. So it's like a discovery phase, and I'm getting in the door most likely because of the buyer work that we're doing with that person, right? Or buyer work I'm doing with other people. And the way in which you get in the door is just by asking the right questions. If you had a buy at the right price, would you consider selling it now? I know you're thinking about July, but if someone was there right now, do you think you'd transact? Well, yeah, had a long settlement, great. look at this case study. We sold this property off market last week. The owner was actually going to sell next year. We've freed some capital up for them. They're now going to buy this year, like just work out different ways and asking the question in different dialogues, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think then when you're with the person is like having that discovery phase and having that off market conversation up front is like, if we have a couple of buyers, is it worth taking them through? Here's a list of 10 of them. Like, why don't we just get them through on the weekend, give you some feedback on the market, help you make better decision, open doors in different ways for you. So yeah, that's what I'd be looking at.
Thanks,
So
mate.
does that, Tommy, sorry, does that answer that like completely?
Absolutely. But it was interesting because Nick didn't just say the one question. He worked it from all different angles. He said this, then tried this, then asked that. Like, there was a couple different dialogues he actually said there.
People love case studies as well. Like, if you think someone is a seller, then you should be asking them, if you had a buy, would they consider selling it now rather than waiting? And then have a case study that you use consistently. Look, we sold 10 Smith Street. It was last month, but let me just tell you about that. How did that come about? Do you mind if I pop over and just go through it with you for 10 minutes? I'm in the street. Like, different avenues like that to get in front of them. And then people love case studies because it's relative to them. Like, oh, this is, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, they're downsizing. They never thought they'd be able to buy before they sold. But what we did is we actually got a great buyer that moved from New York. They came through once, they came through twice, they ended up buying it on the third inspection. They paid 10%. Like, just make the case study up for that person so it becomes relative for them as well. Then they can appreciate that person's situation, how that connects with themselves also. But getting in the door at the right time is going to be critical for you. If they're not ready to sell, then they're not ready to sell. You can try and progress them, but I think you've got to be getting into the right time.
And sorry, before you go, are you making sure you've got like 3 to 5 buys for that specific home before you get in the door?
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't,
Yeah.
It just depends. Yeah. But if it's within the price points I've been selling, I bet you I can find 2 or 3 people that can walk through on a Saturday. No worries. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, mate.
Don't forget, Nick last year, Nick 2 years ago, I think it was, probably only did a couple in a 12-month, even though he's doing 80 to 100 sales, he probably only had a couple off-market sales.
I think I did 2, yeah.
2. Was that last year or the year before?
That was last year. I did 2, yeah.
Yeah. He did 2. And I said, we had a really conversation. I said, Nico, like, this is an area that you have to do better at your level. How many off-markets you done this year of the 50 sales you've had?
I've done 6.
So he's gone from 2 to 6, and it's still very much part of his process. Any questions, guys and girls, as we go? I'm going to wrap it up soon with you. Just with goals, mate, how important are they for you? Have you always had them, or just over the last couple of years?
Always had them. Always had them. You need a target to aim towards. They're critical. I have them in front of me when I get ready in the morning. I've got them in my phone. I look at them every day. I know them off the top of my head. They're critical. Yeah.
Can I share yours with the group?
Yeah, sure.
I just pulled your file out while we were having a conversation.
Yeah.
100 deals for this year, 15 off market.
Yeah.
6 weeks holiday, Europe mid-year, in USA, Mexico, December, January.
Yeah.
20 books. You and I talk regularly about books. You sent me a lemon, by the way, that last book. No alcohol in Australia.
Yeah.
Is that still on?
That's still on. I've broken it once, but yes, it's still on. 100% still on.
By the way, if Nick gives you a book recommendation, ask me first. And then buy a freestanding house by the 30th of June.
Yeah.
And?
Yeah, I've done that as well.
Just bought that a few weeks ago. So, I just pulled that out because I was thinking, oh, where's Nick? Nick was here. There's his goals. And he's like, if he hasn't already achieved them, he's on track for them. So it just shows you he's always had them. So that's really, really good. Who sent me a book in the chat? Was that Vince or Gav?
No, that was a good book he recommended you. I liked it.
Oh, you did like it?
Mountain is usually great.
There you go.
We got it off the same guy, actually.
I'll talk to you off record about books, okay, mate?
PPD boys love my book recommendations. They're always hitting me up for them.
No, fair enough. Hey, we've all got a different opinion on things. It was okay. It was okay. By the way, the book I'm reading at the moment, is actually fantastic. Robin Sharma, things that money can't buy or something like that. Things that wealth that, I don't know. I'll put on my stories anyway. It's really good. If you lose a listing, how do you deal with that, mate?
Just move on to the next. It wasn't always like that. I used to be down on myself, overthink it. I'd work out why I lost the listing, especially if it was something that I should have won. And then I have actually written down what I need to do better, and then it's boom on to the next. That's it. Yeah.
And if you're behind on a listing, so say you're up against an AP or whoever, and you feel like you're behind, what will you do to try to pivot and try to move it your way?
I'll either try and bring another agent in from the office that can help me list it as well. I'll also try and bring other agents from our brand in as well, which we've done. And then, potentially look at take buyers through as well. If I'm behind the 8 ball, give them the option of having a buyer come through, or giving them an option of another set of eyes to come through that might help you add value.
Yeah. Yeah. Go low on com, organize a second meeting.
Yeah. A good one is getting the owner into your office as well. We've spoken about this a lot, is, if you're sort of behind a little bit in the listing appointment, sometimes I've felt like I'm in a listing appointment and I know I'm behind and we're not connecting, and I'll actually set the meeting up in the listing appointment to come back to the office before I then talk about price and also fee as well, to just dangle the carrot a little bit, because I know that I need to get them in front of them again in order to secure it, or in order to even get, a look in if I'm actually behind. So getting them into the office is pretty important, I think. And if you can do that, I've had a very good strike rate with it. I feel like people are comfortable, they're loosened up, and you can usually sign it second time round in the office.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a power play if you can get them in, for sure. Last one before we let you go, Nick. George, did you want to, I thought your challenge was a good one for Nico as well.
Hey Nick, George from Bell Property, Beecroft, Carlingford. Just starting out, had a vendor we presented to about 2 weeks ago, and I just found it, the first week was fine in terms of following up, but like every time I spoke with them, they were just talking about an update that they hadn't made a decision, interviewing other agents, whatnot, and I started to struggle in terms of following up and just staying relevant in terms of how hard I follow them up and what I followed up with, just to see if we can sort of stay top of mind. Found out yesterday we ended up losing that one, but not due to anything sort of in our control. But I guess asking you from a point of view, when there's a vendor that's not making a decision within a couple of days or a week after meeting them, what your follow-up process is to stay top of mind and stay relevant.
Yeah, I find that for me personally, that if there's a longer runway to build rapport over that time period, I've usually got a better chance of getting it. Like if it's catch and kill and they've got a relationship with someone else, like it's pretty hard to get those pieces of business. So if you've got a longer runway, it's actually, you can outwork the competition and show them what you're doing in the background to make them feel as though you're going to be the one for them. And that might be as simple as like the early morning text message. The text message on a Saturday afternoon, giving them an update of the market and how many auctions you had and what the clearance rates are. Mate, do it on a Sunday morning, 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Hey guys, send out a quick market update weekly. Just thought I'd share it with you as well. It usually goes to my current clients that I have on the market, but I thought you might like to see it as well. And then just have, your list of sales or your list of, properties you've had open that week and the results there that you had. And then I think just trying to keep it as relevant to their property as possible. Ask them if you had a buy for the property, would it be worth taking them through? Get them into the office. Ask them what timing they're hoping to make a decision by. If they're like, oh, we're not too sure. Okay, do you want to be on the market by X date? And then sort of press them a little bit like that, try and close them a little bit like that. Because if you've got a timeline, they're working towards, you can probably get a better understanding of how hard you're going to push and pull at different times. But I think as well, which I actually heard Andrew Liddell say the other day, which I do sometimes, but I'm going to start doing it a lot more. And I was in one of these chats, is that like Andrew, if he gets an appointment where, they've called him in, hey, we've got a property, we're going to be selling it, and it's in a week's time. Andrew's actually contacting them consistently during that period to make sure he's building rapport with them before he even sits in the living room. And I do that a little bit, but I think I can do it better. And I think it's just about picking up little things like that from these, elite agents who are doing 100, 150, 200 deals a year. And like, what does their process look like in terms of pre-listing, right? How are we asking the right questions before we get in the door? And then also post-listing as well.
Yeah,
So that
help? Yeah, no, it does. It does.
I mean, that's a high level response from a high level agent, George. But you've got to figure out, for me, I'd just say, mate, you got to stay in touch with them with relevant information. For me, I just keep it really simple. Let them know what's been listed, what's been sold, and the question of the vendor is, how's everything going, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor? Are you still wanting to sell? How's everything progressing? Do you feel like you're any closer to making a decision? They're the questions. Do you feel like you're any closer to making a decision? Sorry, mate, Gav, can you just ask that question about when you're competing with a high-profile agent? Because Nick is a high-profile agent. So can you ask him the question, that challenge you had? Like, how do you win business? Do you know the one? And then Adam and Bobby, I saw your comment, and then we'll say goodbye to Nick.
So Nick, I suppose what I'm sort of facing at the moment is coming up against like quite established agents where they'll go in with like quite a low fee, and obviously with paid marketing, that kind of thing, I'm just getting quite a lot of pushback on that. How would you navigate around that without having to essentially drop your fee to try and win the business?
So
I'll just interject, Nick. You've got associates here or standalone agents competing with agents like you and others that may go as low as 1.1 on a $5 million listing and even pay 10 grand for the marketing, right? Now, some of the high profile agents can do it because they've got so much stock and they want that listing in Queen's Park or they want that listing in Bronte. If you're like, how do you compete with that? Because you're one of the high profile agents.
It's a good question. It's a really good question. A lot of agents, like, for me personally, this is just me, and it might not be suitable, and Ivan, you might have something to say as well. For me, if I'm coming up, I want the listing no matter what. If I need to do it a little bit cheaper to get the business, because it's going to project, more profile, it's going to springboard me into a market that I want. It's going to have to depend on the listing that you want, right? So, yeah, you don't want to go and drop your fee every time. But if it's a listing where it's a house or a semi, and there's going to be a roll-on effect where you're going to meet other buyers at that listing, I think you got to want to win the business, right? Like, okay, you don't want to do it every time, but if it means you're going to get the business, make money off it, build your profile, build a better buyer network, build more relationships in that marketplace that you're targeting, mate. Like, I just wouldn't miss it. I'd just go for it. Like, do what you need to get the business. Don't worry about fee in the early days. Like, when I was starting out, I was like, I don't care what fees I'm charging. I just want to put signboards up, because I know if I put signboards up, I'm going to build profile off the back of that. And I reckon I kind of lost that a little bit. Like maybe a few years ago, I was focusing so much on this and fees. I'm like, go back to the simple stuff. Putting a signboard up and putting a sold sticker on it is the best way to create more business. So if you need to come down a bit on price, because mate, I'm one of them that puts, has to pay for marketing sometimes, does it at 1%. We all are, right? We all do it, right? But I think if you want the business, mate, just get it. Do what you need to get the business and then use that for a springboard to get more business off the back of it. If people are always dropping their fees, like just on that, I mean, I haven't really answered your question, but like find a different avenue to actually add value to them as well. Is it just fee that they're focused on, or is it, mate, you guys have more sales than any other agent in the whole country. Like you should be using Alex or using someone else in the office that might be a specialist to come in and, whether that's getting them into the office to meet the partners or, showing a different bit of proper, like a value add for that particular person, which isn't just based on fee. I hope that answers your question. It sort of does.
Can I just go one step further? You got to remember, Nick's selling 100 a year. He might do 10 at 1% or 20, but he's doing the rest at 1.5 or more. So he can do that, Gav. If you're selling 20 or 30, you've got to be really careful. It just can't be a 1% everywhere, because it's not a commercial. It doesn't work for any agent in any market. But to his point, if you feel like, if a vendor said to me, and I'm just going back to my selling days, if a vendor said to me, I really like you, Gav, but I've been offered X over here, would you do it for that? Like, like to Nick's point, if it's in your core market and you want the listing, or you don't have any listings at the moment, you would say straight away. So if I agree to that 1.1%, will you move forward with me right now? Yes, I would. Let's do it. Don't muck around. That's what Nick's just saying. I'd say the same thing. Any questions, Gab, before I get Adam, before we let Nick go, because he's been with us for only an hour?
No, that's great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
man. Adam or Bobby, just quickly, mate. Last one.
Yeah, sorry for delay. Just any particular dialogue for booking the second meeting in the office if you see that it's not going well in the room?
I think if you're not getting that connection, it's sort of about setting it up early on as well. Like, you know, you should almost have an understanding of how the meeting's going to go before you get there, because you might ask them, you know, are you meeting with other agents? Yep. Would you prefer to do one meeting, or would you prefer to meet twice? Oh, I'm not too sure. Well, it's a big property. A lot of the time I take a lot of time with my research. I'd love to come and meet you guys first. Like, it depends on the situation initially. So think about the pre-list and what you're doing there and what the questions you're asking that person. Because then if you're in the meeting, there's no connection, they don't want to meet twice, and you're not going to bring it up. Make sense? However, if you're in the meeting and you find that lack of connection, you can easily just say something along the lines of, look, it's a really unique house. I'd love to do a little bit more research and come back to you. I'd also like to run it past, my business partner or a colleague. What I'd love to do is actually meet with you tomorrow. You guys around at 10 or 10:30, come up to the office quickly. It's just a 10-minute conversation. And then we can go through pricing a little bit more. And I can show you the best comparables in the market, just to make sure that you've got reference to the right sales. And obviously it's opening the right doors for you going forward. And like, we all know it's not going to be a 10-minute meeting. You're going to try and sign them up. But like, just by making it as easy as possible for them, is kind of the dialogue and kind of the way in which I would approach it for sure. But like, I'll give you a case study. I had this property that was in down in Clovelly. There was kids running everywhere. Like, one of the parents was making dinner, and I was like, it's a shit fight, right? So I was like, fuck that. Let's get them back to the office. I was like, look, guys, looks like you're busy at the moment. I'm so glad I got to pop for the first time. Now that I've seen, I just went straight to that, because I was like, I'm never going to be able to get the business here. And at the time I was competing with PPD. So I was like, they're going to come in here, they'll sign it up on the spot, they'll get them at the right time. I was like, I need to actually progress this owner in the right way, sort of just making a call and just executing on it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sweet.
I used to just leave things off the table. Renee and Mel would attest to this. I would just leave things off the table, Adam. So I'd go in and just leave commission and marketing off the table. So I'd look at it, have a great, really nice home, styling, timing, great. Okay, do you mind if I go away and have a think about it? Can we perhaps get back together? I just want to think about my fee proposal. I'll put together the best marketing program. In terms of the price, I've got some ideas, but I'd like to just have another look at that. Could we get together on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock in my office? Would that be okay? Could you and Alan both come at that time? So I'd keep because if you tell them everything then there's no need for them to come meet you.
Exactly.
No need.
Yeah.
One last one. Just, are you finding that buyers are weakening? This is a Paul Jukes challenge. Are you finding there's some weakness from the buyer side, Nico?
Yeah, at the moment, I reckon over the last couple of weeks, I've just seen a little bit more fickleness to buyers, without a doubt. You've really got to stay on them.
Yeah, that was my question. So then how are you approaching that, and how are you
trying to understand how motivated they are as a buyer, holding their hand through the process and not relying on your laurels? I had a deal sort of fall over the other day where I was just a little bit slow in terms of getting the vendor to accept an offer, and it didn't come together. And that was probably on me that it hasn't come together. So I think it's just about understanding who they are, qualifying them correctly when they're super transactional, giving your owner, sort of setting your owner up early as possible in my campaign to know that they could do a deal in the first 5 days or 10 days.
That's great, mate. Nico, that was quite inspiring, mate. You got me pretty pumped. Thank you. You did.
Thanks,
you did.
mate.
Mate, it's really good. Very you speak with
Appreciate
a lot of clarity. I'm sure the guys enjoyed it. Thank you, mate. How's your day looking tomorrow?
Thanks, guys. Yeah, not bad. We've got a couple of auctions, opens, the usual stuff. But yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. It's good. Thank you.
Humility goes a long way, mate. Good on you. Have a great weekend, Nico.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Good guy.